All right, 12:02. So I think it's a pretty good time to get started. So thank you everyone for attending this afternoon slash morning, depending on where you are. Today, like I said, is on multi-sensor cameras. So really excited to dive into these and talk about them. And let's just go over today's agenda one more time. It's going to be what are multi-sensor cameras for people who are not familiar with this technology or what they are. We're going to go into what they are, how they work, and we're going to talk about some of the benefits of those, whether you have a brand new facility and it's a net new install, like the advantages of a multi-sensor camera, or if you're in a situation where you're looking to maybe upgrade some cameras that you already have, what are the benefits of multi-sensor? We'll dive into what multi-sensor cameras that we offer here at SEW, and then some of the deployment strategies. Like each model has its own, you know, specific niche it can be really, really good at. And then another question we get asked quite often is like, what's the difference between a fisheye camera and a multi-sensor? When should I use one? What are the advantages, disadvantages? We're going to dive into that quite a bit, and then we'll hit up some Q&A at the end if we have time. So, by the way, if you guys want, anytime feel to put in questions. Don't feel like you have to wait to the end. We'll try to address them as they come in, but also maybe address them as the topic comes up too. So just put them in when you want, and we'll get to them when we can. A little bit about SEW. We're a value-driven company that provides end-to-end security solutions. And so, whether you are a installer of security camera products, or you're looking to purchase them or get security for you, we can do either turnkey installation, self-install options. We have a dealer program, and one of our big keys to fame, I guess you could say, is our support team. We have free US-based support that's included with our products, all based here in Asheville, North Carolina. Awesome team that makes sure that your security investment is performing as it should, and that if you have any questions, that you can reach out to them and make sure it gets resolved. So now that being said, let's jump right into this today. What is a multi-sensor camera? So the basics. So a multi-sensor camera is any camera with either multiple lenses or sensors on them. When we think about multi-sensor, it is multiple lenses or each camera. So for example, in this picture here, this is one of our dual dome options, and each of them have their own sensor and own lens. So that's what makes up a multi-sensor camera. And there's a wide range of multi-sensor cameras on the market. You're going to have ones that have up to two lenses on them, some of them with four, some of them have multiple lenses and a PTZ on them, or so they're essentially, it just comes down to having one or more lenses slash sensors or both on the camera. One of the biggest appeals of a multi-sensor camera is that most of them out there only require one Ethernet cable to deliver all of these streams to you. So in our case, all of our multi-sensor cameras can get power and video from the single Ethernet cable using PoE technology, power over Ethernet. And this is one of the big advantages of those, because cable runs are increasingly more expensive with labor costs. We'll go into that just a little bit. But this is a huge appeal to them for both net new and of course retrofits as well. So let's dive right into that. If you're looking at a new facility and you're planning out your security camera solution right now, what are some of the advantages of a multi-sensor camera? So multi-sensors are something that they've been around for quite a while, but just in the last year or two, it's been a much hotter topic, a much more requested camera from us. It's one that we're building into systems a lot more from the jump. And the biggest reason why is post-COVID labor availability and pricing. Post-COVID labor prices are up quite a bit over our pre-COVID pricing, and that's only likely to continue to increase. And what a multi-sensor camera allows you to do is, stack on those labor savings. So they're basically multiple cameras within one housing, right? And so what that means is you have one cable run, you only have one camera to mount, one configuration, one switch port, one IP address, and then when you get into like the maintenance and the the service of the camera, there's only one camera you have to go clean or maintain, right? And so these start really adding up over time, especially at large facilities when you maybe have, 100 cameras potentially at that facility. If we can reduce those down to, 20 cameras or something like that, that makes a big difference in terms of everything that's involved there. Here's a good example of like the flexibility of a multi-sensor camera. In this case, it's our 4-lens multi-sensor, which we'll talk about. But if you look here in the blue, what we've got here is, one place sort of in the middle of this warehouse diagram here, and it's looking at, people and forklifts coming down the aisles here. So it's covering both of these. And then it's also covering them, coming up as well. So that way we get coverage of both sides of the aisle. And then on top of that, with this single camera and this single cable run, we're able to go ahead and zoom in to a couple of key areas because it has a varifocal lens that we can zoom in. So, in this case, we want to keep an eye on the inbound shipments coming in. So they can kind of zoom in there, keep an eye on that. And then also the outbound shipments. They want to make sure that things are coming out. So they can cover a large portion of their key facility needs with just a single cable, single camera. And that's the real beauty of the multi-sensor camera. Here's another example. This is with our dual dome camera. So this is in its natural habitat, so to speak, a hallway, right? And one of the things with a hallway when you're deciding that, hey, we need cameras in our hallway, you've got a couple different options. One of them is to put two cameras kind of side by side there and be able to see both people coming and going. And in this case, this kind of builds that into it for you. So you can see as somebody walks around this facility, they're going to be seen by a good face shot, which is, the important key part there. If they go into here, they're going to be seen on this camera pointing this way. Or if they keep going, they're going to be seen both on this one, and then you're going to be able to see where they go from there as well. And then as they exit, you're going to be able to see the same thing. You're going to get a good face shot of them over this way, as well as a clear look at where they're going throughout this facility. So, and this is again with one cable run per camera, so it's simplifying that. It's making that installation a lot quicker, a lot easier, and lower costs on the labor side of things. So one of the, is a good advantage, or a good example, excuse me, is turn 32 to 8. And what does that mean? Well, it's not magic, it's multi-sensors. We offer one that has now brand new, just released this month actually, that has 4 lenses inside the single camera. And so this is a big breakthrough when it comes to, multi-sensor, because now what it can mean is if you have an area or facility with 32 cameras, that's turning it into potentially just 8 cameras. And that's when you stack that upon each other, when you go from having to run 32 new cables, mount 32 cameras, get 32 different mounting boxes, configure 32 cameras, all this kind of stuff into 8, you can see where that labor savings comes in, where that time savings comes in, to where maybe this install with 32 cameras takes 3 days. With 8 cameras, maybe they can get it done in a day. And so it's a really powerful thing. And another thing too, I'll mention about, this situation is, this is only requiring 8 ports on a switch and only 8 IP addresses. And so for our IT people or people who maybe have to make the IT people happy with this, if you guys got Cisco switches or, higher end switching equipment, you know how expensive each port cost can be with that. So if you're going from having to plug in 32 cameras into your switches from 32 to 8, that's another huge savings right there built into them. So, and then installers, for our installation partners out there, I really recommend thinking about these early. If you design systems with multi-sensor in mind, it can give you an edge against, your other competition in the area. Like I mentioned, IT tends to love these things because of the simplicity in terms of, the amount of devices. IP addresses, port switches, everything we just mentioned. Operations also loves multi-sensor. We'll cover that when we talk about like the fisheye differences, but they're simple, people understand them. And again, the install can be done more quickly and smoothly. And then what about for pre-existing installs? If maybe you already have cameras and you're looking to upgrade, where do multi-sensors come in? Well, um, multi-sensors are great because what they can do is expand your coverage sometimes dramatically with no need to rerun new cables. So let's just say you have a single dome camera or a single bullet camera, whatever. You can replace that with a dual dome and then get, twice the amount of area. So you can, put them side by side and kind of get more area that way. Or you can also position them in multi-point situations. So maybe point one at one area, point one at the other. We'll cover that in just a second too. Or if you ended up getting our four lens camera, what we call the observer, that's going to give you 4 times the coverage now with that single one. And there are no need to run new cables with this. So this is like, a no-brainer if you go like, hey, I kind of wanted a couple more points of coverage that I'm just not getting right now. A multi-sensor can replace it without having to rerun new cables or add new cables. And we know how hard that is when it comes to the business is open, the construction can be really disrupted to a lot of situations. So we definitely want to make sure that it's easy. So, and I do see a couple questions. I'll just hit these up because we're actually going to run into one of them right now. Somebody asked with the multi cameras, does it only take up one space on the NVR like a fisheye, or does it take up more channels on the NVR? It does take up more channels. That's why I have this note here to make sure you do have enough channels. Most multi-sensor cameras do individual streams. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of that when we compare it specifically to fisheyes towards the end. But yeah, that is one factor you do have to consider, especially in a pre-existing system, that obviously you have space on your NVR or your VMS to handle the additional channels that it's going to use there. So another question, no need to run new cables. Yeah, obviously we're talking about PoE is what they asked. And yes, you're correct. Assuming that you already have a camera there, you most likely already have, an Ethernet PoE IP-based camera. If you have like coax and stuff, you're probably have to rerun new cable, of course. But there's that's going to be a definite you're going to want to run new cable if you have coax. But if you have an IP camera there, shouldn't be any need to rerun new cable. It's just going to be using Ethernet like any of the other ones. There's no difference. And then the last question we have right now is, do multi-sensor cameras compromise resolution? And since there's multiple cameras from one source, no. For the most part, we'll compare that. We do show fisheyes. Multi-sensors are almost always better image quality than most fisheye options, even the higher resolution fisheye options. So, all right, let's jump into the offerings here. So, this is going to go into specifically what multi-sensor cameras we offer. And the first ones are dual dome. We call this the Informant Dual Vision. And this has two 4 megapixel domes. So really all together, you're looking at like a 8 megapixel total each individual channel, if you kind of want to look at it that way. And each of these cameras are independently positionable. So you can point one front, one back, one left, one right, whatever you want to do. And again, one Ethernet cable, 2 channels on your NVR. Let's talk about some of the use cases for this. I already showed one earlier, but hallways are a really, popular place to put this. Honestly, these are popular kind of everywhere because of the labor prices and everything. It's just, if we can think of an area where, hey, we probably put 2 cameras around this area, we're going to put maybe one of the multi-sensor cameras just to kind of help reduce that labor cost and time. But hallways are an obvious one because you can see both ends of the hallway. So anytime you're looking at a school, hospital, office spaces, it's a really, really popular one for those situations. You can see here another example of what that really looks like. One's kind of pointing, on the corner here of a thing. One's looking at sort of the check-in desk here, and the other one's looking down the hallway. So that way you get, both areas with a single cable run. Another point too is with these, and here's an example of it inside the hallway. And this is a little bit of a shorter hallway, but one thing I do want to clarify with the multi-sensor that's really nice is that you have a good face image all throughout, because especially if you put it in the middle there, you're reducing your length to somebody's face by quite a bit. And since there's two cameras there, it's gonna, within 50 feet, you're gonna be able to get a really good face shot of somebody. So and then the other side of this too is there's a feature on our NVRs and cameras called quarter mode. So you may notice like in this image here, go backwards a little bit, it's typical 16:9 aspect ratio, which is good for most situations, but in hallways, you usually care more about like the length here. So you can see that this is now in hallway mode or quarter mode. And this just gives us a longer one, and that allows us to have basically um no blind spot whatsoever in the hallway, even with just a single camera. So you can see as I kind of cross that threshold under the camera, it's captured me the entire time. So if I'm going into this door or whatever, there's no missing anything there. So that's another popular feature on that camera. Oops, what off here. Another popular area for the domes is going to be just expanded coverage. So if you do like kind of back to forth there, each dome offers about 98 degrees of coverage. If you put those side to side, that's about 196 degrees. So it's great for exteriors. Sometimes again, in the quest to reduce the cable runs, reduce the labor, you can put one of these on the side of the building and get 196 degrees of coverage versus having to run two cameras or something like that. So it's great for exteriors or larger rooms. And here's another example of sort of what that looks like here. So you can see this is a large conference room that they kind of want to get good images on people's faces and everything. So this is kind of put in the corner here, and they can see people coming in as well as getting good face details as well. And I'm trying to fix this. I'm not sure why it.
I think you got to hit escape and then share again.
Oh, you guys
Slides.
aren't seeing my screen?
I think or like in the slide itself, escape and then present again. Happens to me all the time.
Sorry about that.
No,
Yeah,
it's
it's the first time
fine.
it's happened to me.
I hate that it goes, yeah. Yeah.
All right, there we go. But yeah, here's a better look at that one I was just talking about in terms of wider coverage. So yeah, just to wrap up the dual dome option, this is our most popular multi-sensor at the moment. And just because of that flexibility, I think, and the lower cost of entry for it, it makes sense in so many applications that it kind of speaks for itself in most of them. But the 196, the hallway options, the multi-point, etc. And then another pretty unique one is our dual lens PTZ. We call this the Watchkeeper Dual Vision. This is a big take on, multi-sensor, because at top here, we've got our 4 megapixel fixed lens camera. And then at the bottom, we've got our PTZ. And so one of the biggest things, and one of our last webinars was on PTZs, that if you're interested in PTZs, I definitely would take a look at it. But one of the biggest things about a PTZ, the downsides about a PTZ, I should say, is that when you're zoomed in on an area, that's what you're getting, right? So if you're zoomed in on a car and something else happens across the parking lot, you're not capturing that. And this kind of works to be able to get you the wider area with the fixed lens, while the PTZ gets the details. And again, this is just one cable, even though it's a high powered PTZ with a dual fixed lens camera at top. And so the this is kind of what that looks like. So you can see, in this case, one of them's pointing kind of to the right. One of them this one always stays straight there. So you can imagine the situations, again, like think about wide in detail. The fixed lens sees the wider area of the parking lot. The PTZ sees the details, which allows it to maybe get license plates, entrances, etc. And here's an example image of one that's installed that does exactly that. So you can see this top one here is the fixed lens. This is looking at our wider area. And then the bottom one is our PTZ, and that's zoomed in at the entrance to be able to get better details from the cars coming in, license plates as they leave, etc. And that kind of brings up a couple of the Q&A questions that we do have. What about capturing license plates reading exclusively? We do have a license plate specific camera actually that does both. The big thing is that number one, the optics, it's got a white light, everything, it's built for specifically license plate reading. So I highly suggest going for that option. So we can send you some information on that. Multi-sensor, like in this case, this is going to be able to see this plate, but it doesn't log it or anything like that. So I would definitely recommend looking for that if like license plates are more a very necessary thing for your security solution. But this can do something like that where we're kind of focusing in this particular case, looking at the license plate. And this one's looking at the Y. So there are options for that, but again, I would probably go for a license plate specific camera so you get all the features and everything. Next question was, what is the power consumption? So that's a really good question. There is variation, like the dual domes. We'll actually cover that a little bit. We look at the specs a little bit deeper, but the only one that requires any more than like that requires a PoE injector is our 4-lens one. Otherwise, they're just PoE or PoE plus. So not crazy more than any of our standard cameras. And then Mark asked if I have an NVR with 4 channels, one channel is currently in use. If I got a 4-sensor camera, could I use just 3 of the 4 sensors? Yes, yeah. So if you decide that, hey, I don't want to use 3 out of the 4, or any multi-sensor camera, you can choose which of the sensors you want to add on to the NVR and which ones you don't. And then do multi-sensor cameras have IR for night operation? And yes, they do. We'll cover that more when we dive deep into the specs, but every single one of these have either IR or actually this one actually has white light and IR, so stool light. But yeah, they're all night vision capable, weatherproof capable, everything like that. So, all right. And then moving on to our newest option here, this is the 4-lens multi-sensor. This has 4 independent lenses built into it. Each of them are also varifocal and they are zoomable. So what that means is that you can zoom in, zoom out, be able to kind of really hone in what the areas you want to see, like we showed you with that warehouse example. And the best thing about this is still just one cable. Again, like all the other multi-sensors, this is a 4 independent channels, so it is going to take up 4 channels on your NVR. And here's an example of what this looks like inside here. So inside of this, the camera, that each of the lenses are on what a rail basically. And so you can kind of move these around. So in a lot of situations, for example, if you're corner mounting this, if you can't move those, that back one is just going to look at the wall, right? So this is actually built with that in mind, that we know people are going to want flexibility with these. They're not just sort of a 360 camera, that they're going to need multi-points and everything else with it. So each of these allows you to kind of move these within there. And that, just to be clear, like the movement of these is manual, like you're seeing me do here, but the zooming and stuff you can do through the NVR. So once you get it positioned, you can zoom autofocus from the NVR. But yeah, this gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what the camera's looking at in key areas. And you actually can see on this one too, that each of the IRs are actually the infrared. This is where the night vision comes in, are actually adjustable too. So if you kind of want to point it more downwards, you can do that. There's actually even a IR one at the bottom too. So there's no blind spots when it comes to the infrared either. And again, this is kind of what that example there again, where we position one using the pendant mount here that you can see, and we're covering general area with the blue there, and then more zoomed in with the red. So what does a four lens multi-sensor offer with the observer? Complete flexibility. You can put this in so many different situations. The middle of a room like we kind of did there. If you got a big space inside an office, inside of a warehouse, inside of a auto repair bay, anything that you have a large space that you want to cover, this is an awesome option. Another really one that we've been using quite a bit is the corner of a building. So you put this on the side of a building, corner of a building, I should say. You point one kind of left, one right, one straight, and then kind of one down to be able to give you a really good look at what's going on, both sides of the corner, in front of it, or pointed at another key area. There's just so much flexibility with that. And when you're able to do that on the exterior, especially, you're talking about just one cable run, one building penetration, that's going to lower that labor cost again by quite a bit. Lobbies are a big one for this. So you put this in the middle of a lobby. You have one that looks a little wide, another one that points, maybe it zooms in at key areas, maybe the checking kiosk, or whatever you need there. Manufacturing. This is another big one where you can have a wider look at things, but then also zoom in on some of the equipment if they need to see that. And then you can also keep it away from some of the dangerous stuff that's in a manufacturing area for production monitoring. So any kind of dust, dirt, stuff that flies up during the production, because you can zoom in, you can keep it away from that, which is going to reduce the amount or how often you have to maybe clean the camera off to get, sawdust, metal scrapes and stuff like that off of it. So, and the other key thing about this has multiple mounts. So you can do a pendant mount, you can do a corner mount with the arm mount here. You can mount it directly to a ceiling if you want to too. So lots of flexibility with it, as we kind of started with it. So, and here's just a look at what that looks like within the software too. So you can see that this is covering a pretty large office space with a lot of clarity. That's again, like this office space, our office space, we could probably realistically cover everything that we need to cover with just the single camera. Because we've got a good look at both of the entrances and exits here. So you see one over here, and then the other one over here that we've actually zoomed in on, so we can kind of keep track of that a little bit more. But otherwise, we're looking at all the key areas in a very good way. And here's a deeper look at some of the specs here. I won't go over them like individually as much, but to answer the question about infrared, each of them do offer that. So you can see on the dual dome here that's 100 feet for each lens, so they're independent of each other. The PTZ has 325 feet of infrared off of it here on the bottom. And up top is actually a white light. It's 100 feet of white light, so it actually gives you color night vision, which is a really cool feature on that. And then the observer, the four lens one, each of them offer 165 feet of infrared. So it's awesome there. Both of them have eyepiece, all of them are weatherproof rated. The non-PTZ ones are IP67, which is some of the highest you can get in terms of weather, water resistance. They're also IK10 impact resistant rating. So what that means is that they can handle a decent amount of force before that dome part breaks, which is really good for any situation where you're potentially worried about vandalism. Potentially people moving the cameras are also vandal resistant, because in order to move those cameras, you have to take the dome off. So they're much more protected than your standard turret or bullet camera. And last point here about these is the AI features. So these are people and vehicles on all of them, which we'll talk about when we compare to fisheyes. Isn't always the case. Very often isn't the case with fisheye cameras. And one of the cool things about ours specifically, and this isn't always the case with most multi-sensors, is that every single one of our multi-sensor cameras, if for example, the four lens one, all four of them, you can have the AI on at all times. You don't have to like choose which ones you want the AI on. All four of them support it. So you're not really sacrificing anything by getting multi-sensor. And our selection. So this is one of the questions that a lot of people aren't necessarily even aware of multi-sensor cameras, but sometimes they're aware of them, but they're just not sure if it's the right solution for them. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's it may not be. And that's where our expertise comes in. So we offer no obligation consultations with our security experts, which include, floor plans and really building it out and building your system with you to make sure it fits your needs, right? Sometimes a multi-sensor is going to be involved in that, especially if it, in some of the situations we talked about, hallways, etc. And then sometimes, we're not going to force them in there just for the sake of doing a multi-sensor, right? So sometimes it makes sense, oftentimes it makes sense, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's where, having an expert on your side with no obligation definitely comes in. So feel free to contact us as well if you're interested. Um, that brings up our last topic here, which is fisheye versus multi-sensor. Before I do run into that, I do want to answer a couple of questions we have and also offer people to put in any Q&As that they might have too. Mark, I believe I answered that for lens one in terms of, but just to reiterate, the question was with multi-sensors, um, do you have to put all of them on your NVR? Can you choose which ones you want? And the answer is, yeah, you can choose which ones you want based on which channel it basically is on the camera. So, in the case that you maybe already are locked up with one channel on your 4 channel and you only have space for 3, you can use 3 of the 4. It doesn't force you to use the other one. So, and another question is, I'm needing to focus on a computer screen for our point of sale system. Do you have any camera that would do that? I need to be able to read the screen. That gets into a couple of things in terms of, how far that screen is from that camera. I would recommend one that can zoom in. And then from there, it's probably just an adjustment on the settings. When you zoom in, the camera automatically kind of knows what it's sort of looking at in terms of like the brightness and stuff like that. But, our support team can go in and take a look at that, maybe adjust things like the refresh rate if needed, the brightness of the image and everything like that, the exposure settings, all that kind of stuff. So really, any camera can, but I definitely would recommend zoom, especially if you're looking to see like, depending on the size of the details and stuff like that. All right, and then let's feel free to keep putting questions in there. I'll get them as we keep going there, but let's jump right into the fisheye versus multi-sensor now. Um, what are fisheye cameras? Well, fisheye cameras are single lens cameras. So unlike multi-sensors that have multiple lenses and sensors on them, fisheye cameras just have one lens, one sensor. Um, and they're ultra wide, as the name says, fisheye cameras that offer typically 360 degrees of coverage. And sometimes they fit into similar scenarios to where multi-sensors fit in. And that's why, the conversation of which one's better for me comes up quite a bit. And fisheye sensors are really good at covering large or kind of multiple areas. So this is what a fisheye camera looks like without any de-warping or anything like that. So you can see kind of where it gets its name. It kind of looks like a fish's eye, right? But this is the same area we looked at earlier with that same office space. So this is a really good example of kind of what you're getting there. And I want to go into a couple considerations when we're thinking about, hey, should we use a fisheye camera or should we use a multi-sensor? And one of our first considerations that we're going to put into that is the detail level required. Multi-sensor cameras, we had a question earlier in terms of like, do multi-sensor cameras sacrifice resolution or image quality in order to do what they're doing? And the answer is no. They're going to be just as good as like, for example, the 4 megapixel dual dome that we have is going to be just as good as our 4 megapixel turrets, if and stuff like that. So there's no difference in terms of that quality. But when we compare it to fisheye, multi-sensors are generally better because they're standard camera, they're standard lenses, um, and due to the fact that there's multiple in the package there. So in a lot of cases, when we're talking to somebody, we're trying to figure out what is the best solution for you. We're kind of going to figure out how much detail do you need within in that image. Do we need to see somebody's face very clearly as they walk through this office space, or is just being able to see them a little bit, being able to see where they are and everything? Okay. What level of detail, and this is really important outside when we put these things in corners and stuff like that. What level of detail you're looking for outside is going to be another factor. So, and just to kind of give you an example, like again, here is one of the images from the multi-sensor, and that's the fisheye. So if we kind of do some zooming in here, you can kind of see what that really looks like. Um, especially here on this bottom one, it kind of gives you a really good example of what you're looking at. You can see that like, some of the corners here, especially as it kind of gets into the corners, it's a little bit more warped. It's a little bit less clear. You can see that, this is a lot more, the lighting is having a little bit more issues because we'll talk about that. But, this is generally a much, more higher resolution image, better face details, better faces in general. Um, so definitely when it comes to image detail in general, fisheye or in general, multi-sensor cameras are going to be better than fisheyes. For example, when you think about our, four lens one, each of those are 5 megapixels. Um, so that's simple math. 5 times 4 is 20. So that's 20 megapixel versus even our 12 megapixel fisheye here, which is a high resolution fisheye, is you're not going to be able to really keep up with that. And then the other consideration is live viewing. So, when we're asking people or figuring this out, what the right solution is for them, one of the questions we might be asking is, are a lot of people watching this system live? And, if that's the case, when we look at a multi-sensor camera, you look at this image here, you probably don't even know that this is from a multi-sensor camera. It just looks like a standard security camera, right? Whereas when we look at this fisheye, that's pretty obvious that it's a little bit weird. Sometimes when I'm talking to people who maybe have never seen a fisheye camera, I present a fisheye camera, they go, ooh, ugh. And they're kind of like a little taken back by it, because, well, they're fisheyes, right? So with that being said, if you have somebody who's maybe looking at the system, a guard, an operator, people are just maybe looking at it very frequently to perform their job. I definitely would recommend multi-sensor cameras because they're going to show normal images without having to do anything. Fisheye cameras do have dewarping capability and stuff, but that's usually an on-demand kind of thing that, when you bring it up, you have to do stuff to actually get it to look normal. And so I generally don't recommend, if live viewing is a really important part, to rely too much on fisheyes. Multi-sensors are definitely a better one there. And then just to answer a couple questions that we have coming in, do these cameras reduce the glare from taillights in order to see a license plate? They can. In terms of license plates, again, we do have a specific license plate camera that we actually have a license plate webinar too that we did in the past that I definitely would recommend looking at a recording for that. License plates, there's a lot of factors with that. These do have like backlight compensation and stuff that we can maybe adjust, but I definitely wouldn't recommend any of these specifically for license plate. I would definitely go with our license plate camera. And then another question, can each image be named as camera 1, camera 2? And absolutely, you can name them whatever you want. You don't have to necessarily name it by 01, 02 or anything. You can name it front door, back door, side, whatever you're looking at in there. So another question is, will these multi-sensor fisheye cameras integrate fairly easy to any Imperial or Admiral NVR that SW has? And answer is yes. Any of our cameras should work with these. Now, if you do have an older NVR, I would probably just double check, especially if it's maybe getting up there in age, maybe it's 3, 4 years old. Some of the capability in terms of like the AI and stuff may not work with it. But in terms of like general, just the image, it should. But certainly if you have an older system, feel free to reach out to us. We'll let you know. But yeah, if you have a current Admiral Imperial NVR that is fairly new, these are going to work no problem with it. They integrate perfectly fine. Are your cameras and firmware developed in-house? So we work with a manufacturing partner that does develop that firmware. So it's not, I wouldn't say in-house, but it's one that we work very closely with as well. Another good question is, I looked at the Scout 5.0, which is actually one of our not quite a fisheye, but our longest single camera, and that is 180 degrees of coverage horizontally. So that's a 16:9 aspect ratio camera, which if I double check, I believe that is on would put it at 100 degrees, but let me just double check that. Yeah, and so the question is if it says 100 degrees, when we see a camera 180 degrees, we're always talking about the vertical, which is the left and right image length. The or the horizontal, excuse me. We're not talking about the vertical, which is the up and down. On the Scout, that is 100 degrees vertical. So that if you kind of have to go through the specs tab and you'll see that for each of our cameras. And then the last question we have so far is are all the multi-sensor cameras NDA compliant? And yes, all of our cameras are NDA compliant, including these and the fisheyes. All right, so getting back to it, the live viewing, again, kind of point to the multi-sensors. Again, here's another look at what that looks like. Again, we're just sort of looking at normal cameras here. It doesn't appear to be like anything from an operator's perspective, from a user's perspective, different than if we were to put four normal cameras out there. Consideration number 3 is going to be cost, right? And a little bit of this goes into where you're placing it, right? Sometimes fisheye cameras make a lot of sense in like hallway intersections and stuff like that, where maybe you don't need the resolution and the detail, but you need the coverage of seeing where somebody goes. One of the big advantages of a fisheye over a multi-sensor is going to be the fact that fisheyes generally only take up one channel on the NVR. Now, some of them you can do dewarping and it will take up actually dedicated channels on your NVR. But for the most part, when we typically do these, we're only taking up one channel with the fisheye. And that one channel, well, what does that mean for you? Well, what that means is that you can help reduce your NVR size, which means, potentially saving money on the hardware for the NVR, but also your hard drive capacity as well. Since you're not recording as many channels, you're going to be able to get less hard drives to go along with it too. So in general, fisheyes are typically, not always, but they can be a lower cost solution compared to multi-sensor. So that's going to be another consideration. If you talk to one of our security experts, let us know what your budget kind of is, what ballpark you're looking for, and we can kind of make that consideration. Hey, maybe it's not always a verse thing, right? It's not always fisheye versus multi-sensor. It's going to be where, and there are going to be places maybe where we put a fisheye, and there's going to be places where we put multi-sensor. So, and then the consideration number 4, the last one that we have here is the analytics. Analytics are something that has been, a big topic and is really increasing as well, just like multi-sensors. And it's partially because, the most important analytics, like being able to see, hey, is that a person or a vehicle, are trickling down to the standard camera. So almost all of our cameras now, except a couple models, do support whether to tell you whether, hey, in this image, is that a person or a vehicle, which makes searching for those things a lot easier. You can see that example here where I can search for people, see them, etc., get better notifications, etc. One of the big downsides about a fisheye camera when it comes to this regard is that most of them don't do any analytics because the image itself is warped. It's too difficult for the machine learning to really process that and determine correctly, is that a person or a vehicle. Um, Comparatively, multi-sensors are normal images. So the AI generally works normally, right? So as I mentioned earlier, all of our multi-sensor cameras, they support the analytics on every single one of the channels that they have concurrently. So you can have them all on at the same time and, have the analytics there as part of it. So, more and more as we question that, we sort of talk about, well, how are we going to find footage? How are we going to make notifications better? Analytics are a big point of like, well, how we're going to bring that to you. So if the analytics are important, multi-sensors are definitely a better option than fisheyes. There's no doubt about that. And so in general, I think, we kind of did three major 4 considerations, and 3 of them sort of went to multi-sensor in those regards. But again, each security situation is going to be a little different. That's where getting into building out the floor plan, understanding, how your system is going to be operating. Is it going to be people who are just looking at once in a while? All these things really matter to build out, your unique system, your unique solution. So that's sometimes multi-sensor are going to be a lot better, and sometimes, fisheye is going to be the better choice. So, and with that being said, I'll answer the last couple questions that we have here and open ourselves up for more Q&A. And one of the ones that we have here, are you guys gonna be working with third-party NVR providers to improve compatibility of your cameras with other major NVR providers? So all of our cameras are what's known as ONVIF compliant. So ONVIF is the language that typically one brand uses to another to talk to each other. So, if you've got ours with like your example there is Synology, in most cases it should be able to be added through ONVIF. Now one of the things about ONVIF is it's not, a lot of the ONVIF is sort of at the moment for most things, just sometimes or just video and sometimes motion. There is a new standard coming out that is working on the analytics to try to standardize being able to talk to one camera's analytics to talk to the NVRs and vice versa. But that isn't really fully out in mainstream yet. But I do hope that in the future that becomes an easier thing. But yeah, all of our cameras are ONVIF compliant, so it's just a matter of making sure the NVR is ONVIF compliant and understanding what features that are really important to you on that camera to make sure that you're not losing anything by going with a third-party NVR. And then another question is the feet away from an NVR the same 300 max? So really good question. And the answer is yes, these all can do up to 325 feet, 100 meters from the NVR. Some of you may be familiar with our cameras that can do what's known as extended transmission, which allows you to go up to 750 feet from the NVR. And the multi-sensors actually don't support those because they are doing a lot more data. As you can imagine, 4 cameras on there, it's sending more data to the NVR. And so they only support up to 325 feet, whereas some of the other cameras do the longer range. So, if there are longer range options that you may need, a multi-sensor may not efficient, that might be where a fisheye maybe has an advantage there too. So, and then, who is developing that new protocol that I mentioned with the and what is called? So yeah, that's ONVIF. It's still ONVIF. It's just a new profile as part of ONVIF, and I believe it's called Profile M. I may have to double check that, but yeah, I believe that's Profile M. But I'm not 100% sure on that. And there's also, let me double check. Yeah, I believe it's Profile M. So it's still part of the same ONVIF standard, it's just a matter of, again, at that point, then you have to look at the profiles that that individual device will support. So some are going to support Profile M and then some aren't. I haven't seen a ton that do support Profile M quite yet. So, again, sometimes these things that take a little bit of time to get out there and populate. So, all right. And then open it up for any other questions. Otherwise, Dylan, anything else that you wanted to add, or we're going to be sending out an email with more information and everything like that.
No, I think that's it. Recording will come soon. Just needs to process, then we'll upload it, and then yeah, I'll include links to try to find links to everything we kind of talked about. Other than that, no, I think it was good solid overview.
Awesome. Yeah. So keep an eye out on your inbox for some of the stuff we talked about here, recording links, product links, everything like that. Also, we just released a video on the new 4-lens camera. I think we'll probably be emailing it out next week, maybe. Or you can go to our YouTube channel if you're not subscribed already, and then you'll be able to see the overview of that new video or that new camera, what it offers. We got a couple new cameras coming out here in the next, actually, both of them are out, but more information coming out for them in the next week or two. So a lot of exciting stuff happening here. Got one more question so far is there a way to get 1,000 feet from a single camera? There are, but it gets a lot more complicated than the 750 feet that we mentioned in terms of like just PoE and stuff like that. At that point, we have to sort of figure out like, there's a cable technology out there called, I believe it's called Game Changer cable that we've had people with some success with. It's basically higher gauge cable. I haven't personally interacted with it myself, but I have heard good feedback from other clients on it. I'm not 100% sure if that will get you that 1,000 feet. The other option is fiber in that situation. Fiber doesn't do power though, so you're gonna have to power the camera separately. We do have actually, I believe it still has a one camera that does have a fiber input directly, so you can do fiber and then power it separately. But depending on your scenario, I would definitely talk to one of our security experts to kind of figure out maybe there's a lot of different ways of achieving that. And it a little bit depends on like what infrastructure you have there, what infrastructure do you not have, and the best way of achieving that 1,000 feet from a single camera. So all right, well, let's see too many other questions come in. And again, just thank you guys for your time. Hopefully this was useful for you, and everyone have a great rest of your great rest of your day and a good weekend that's coming up here. So take care, stay warm, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.